He's coming up. He's arrived. Anup, Prabhata just arrived. We're just bringing him up. Just a minute.
No problem. We can wait. No problem.
Thank you. Lakshman sir. Are you way up? Right. Okay.
A very good evening, everyone. This is Philo Maria Feroz from Batch 27. I would like to extend my warm welcome to our beloved founder and chairman of Zyme Bangalore, Professor J. Philip, Director of Zyme Bangalore, Dr. Nelliappan, President of Zyme Society, Mr. Anil Philip, Dean Research, Zyme Bangalore, Professor NMK Bhatta, Dean Academics, Zyme Bangalore, Professor Madhukumar, our distinguished guests, respected faculty members, professors, my dear fellow batchmates, and everyone who has joined online. I welcome you all to the third session of the webinar series, COVID, the Innovation Imperative. This session is in partnership with Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. BCIC is the apex chamber of commerce representing large and medium industries in the state of Karnataka. BCIC plays an active and important role in promoting trade and investment in the state and has an excellent domestic and international network of the leading chambers of commerce across the globe. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed nearly every aspect of life, from personal to professional. We have seen a huge change in how companies interact with their customers, how customers choose and purchase products and services, and how supply chains have delivered them in the recent past. To cope with such an unprecedented situation, the industry and organizations have involved new ways and means of doing business. COVID has driven and brought out new innovation imperatives. There's something about adversity that brings out humanity's creative side. We humans have maneuvered our counterattack against COVID-19 with some delay. In a number of domains, we have come up with some interesting breakthroughs and ideas that are worth noticing. Today, in our panel discussion, we have with us Mr. Anup Matthew, Senior Vice President and Business Head, Godrej Construction. Mr. Prabhat Verma, Executive Vice President, Indian Hotel Limited. Mr. C.S. Sethi, Managing Director, Retail and Digital Banking, State Bank of India. Mr. Prabhat Verma is with us, and he is accompanied by Mr. Shreyas Srivatsan, Regional Head, South. The rest of the panel members will be joining us online. Please note, questions will be taken up after all the three panel members have spoken. Online participants can post their questions in the Q&A section. I now call upon Ms. Sharon Anusha to introduce the moderator and the members of the panel.
This session would be moderated by Professor NMK Bhatta, Dean Research at Zyme Bangalore. He has 44 years of technical experience, of which 24 years were with the Defense Research and Development Organization, the DRDO. Thereafter, he worked in TCS for about 10 years and moved to academics in IIM Indore, initially as Professor and Chairman, Industry Interface and Executive Education, and now as Professor and Dean Research in Zyme Bangalore. To proceed, I would like to invite Professor Bhatta to commence the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and very warm welcome to all of you. Once again, welcome to Anup Matthews and Mr. Sethi online. As you all know, that this is the third session on this particular webinar, COVID, the Innovation Imperative. There is a little background to this particular webinar. Our chairman, who is 86-year-old, but he has a childlike creative restlessness. And his creative restlessness leads to a number of ideas. This idea to conduct this particular webinar is again his idea, that how exactly COVID has led each industry to redesign, to recraft their methods so that the business goes as usual. You all know that March 2020, after Prime Minister has announced that lockdown, never before calamity on the entire globe. Almost every country, irrespective of caste, creed, and color, everyone was equally impacted. Almost every country went into a complete turmoil. India was no exception. After the initial lockdown, there were series of restrictions kept on people. some opening, some closings. While this is going on, some of the industries got impacted more. For example, Prabhas hospitality industry, aviation industry, tourism, and even education to some extent. Some industries are impacted a little less, and some industries are positively impacted, like healthcare, though it's a very sad way of making raising your top line, but that helped the healthcare industry to boom and the pharmaceutical to boom. So while this is going on, when we look at a macro level, you see the country has still been growing, though initial setback to our GDP a little bit, but after that we have picked up, we have continued to grow, and the country's economy continued to boom. That means all these industries which have been working in the country have found their own methods of continuing their business. It is a matter of great interest. What exactly happened? How did they, what type of challenges that they faced? I were particularly to, for example, I've been a part of the Tata Group, which Prabhat is now part of, and for many years, and I've been also part of his hotels group for some time. And the type of calamity that has hit them is no ordinary one. What did they do? How did they manage? And similarly, take for example, banking. I still remember many times when I crossed the bank, or even our own bank branches of attached to our institute, we see a board outside, bank closed, because one of the employee got impacted with COVID. There is not a family in this country. It will not be an exaggeration if I say there will not be a single family in this country which has not lost at least one of their kith and kin or very, very close associates due to this COVID. This has been forever, will be etched as the indelible calamity in our hearts, and so many memories are associated with it. So the chairman thought, why not we invite the industry leaders to tell us how exactly they did their business? How did they face the challenges? And these challenges were not an ordinary thing, particularly in things like hospitality, in things like banking and all. There is so much of connect, there's so much of touch and feel, there's so much of going near, and this particular pandemic was spreading like anything. How did they manage the whole thing? How did they run their business? What did they do? So we've already decided that we pick up 12 major industries, and these 12 industries we divided across the 3 days. That is, we started with the I mean, originally started with 30th of April, then 30th of March, then went to 6th of April, and today the last of the sessions, 13th of April. And in the first two webinars, we have covered aviation. We also covered higher education. We covered manufacturing. We covered retail and various other sectors. And each leader has come out and told us what was their perspective, how exactly they handled the pandemic. Some of you might ask, what is the big idea of all this? This is going to be a history. How? Because maybe that in our lifetime, when we all of us have crossed other side of bad side of 60, we may not really see such a problem. Once again, we may not. We never know. But most of you will definitely, if such a thing happens, this will serve as a history. What did your predecessors do? How did they handle? And that will form as a basic guideline for you to take forward your particular business wherever you are employed. Today, we have 3 veterans of the industry. And unfortunately, the 4th one, or Biswajit Roy, could not join because of that. Today evening, we had a big hailstorm. And because of the hailstorm, many of the telecom equipment, telecom systems have gone out of order. And Biswajit was called upon to face the emergency. So he was wanting to talk about one emergency that he faced earlier. and another emergency has hit him, so he could not really join in the last minute. So we understand that, but now we have with us three of the veterans who will be speaking on this, and I would request the MC to introduce the first of the three veterans so that we can take forward.
Mr. Anup Matthew is the Senior Vice President and Business Head at Godrej Constructions. He has over 3 decades of work experience in the construction and real estate sector. He is also responsible for managing the vast portfolio of corporate real estate assets of the organization. Mr. Matthew is the chairman of the board of directors at the Institute of Lean Construction Excellence, ILCE India, and the chairman of the IGBC Net Zero Waste Committee. He is committed in the cause of promoting productivity improvement and sustainable development practices in the construction and real estate sector. I now invite Mr. Anup Matthew to share his thoughts.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, Anup, you are audible. Please carry on.
Okay, thank you. So firstly, many thanks to all of you for inviting me, Dr. Bhatta, and I wasn't prepared for this, but when I got a call from Krishnan, I thought it was appropriate that I like interacting with students, and I thought this may be a good opportunity. So I have a few slides which I will use for talking through some of the things that we faced as we went along. Just a minute, I'll just try and. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
We can see, Anup. Please carry on.
Okay, so I will, this will be mostly for holding the conversation. I'm just trying to. Yeah. So if you, Godrej and Boyce is a flagship company of the Godrej group of companies. It was the first of the companies that was set up. This is still a closely held family-owned company. And while many of our other businesses under the Godrej Industries umbrella are listed companies. Godrej and Boyce has 14 business units. And I head the Godrej Construction business vertical. Godrej Construction has 3 lines of business. So we have a leasing business, we have a property development business, and we have construction materials business. And so when we say, how did we face the challenges posed by COVID, and rightly so, I think many of the industries were affected. And when we began, we did not see the gravity of the problem because we thought it's going to be a few days and then it's going to be done with. But as we went along, we realized that the impact of COVID was very different for each of these 3 businesses. I'll talk about each of them in a little more detail, but something more generic. It was a nationwide lockdown, as all of us are aware. Many of the migrant workers who are on our project sites and many of our facilities went back to their hometowns because of the compulsions that they were facing on their personal front. The supply chains were affected, and also the manpower, when it resumed, also resumed very gradually. Not everybody came back. So one of the first things that we needed to do was follow the government guidelines. Mumbai as a city had very stringent regulations, which was posed upon much of our operations. We have operations in other parts also, and most of these were specific to each of those locations that we had to adapt to. We have robust processes and systems, but many of these had to be adapted to meet the requirements. So as we realized that the problem was gaining a lot of long-term impact, We increased the number of meetings which we had internally with our senior managers. We formed emergency response teams, and we also had a four-pronged approach, and I will talk about a couple of them. For want of time, I'll just talk about two of them. So the first was about increasing our communication, because most people were confused and so were we. But we had to convey the message to everybody so that there was no panic created. So more frequent virtual meetings, periodic circulars were out, or mostly all digitally. We had a lot of new channels of communication for emergency, which was established. The Kochish Construction Division also supports all the manufacturing businesses in the real estate and infrastructure requirements. So in a way, we were wearing both the hats of the 3 lines of business and also supporting all the business units, the 14 business units of Kochish and Boyce. The employees, we had to regularly have communication, and we normally would have had town hall meetings less frequently, but we increased the frequency to once a month. We also use this opportunity to increase our training programs for many of our employees, because there was a lot of time people had, and we thought this was a good opportunity to improve their technical, functional, and leadership skills in this period. We also did 2 initiatives. One was reimagining GC. We allowed many of our employees and all across all levels to participate in what they thought our construction business should be looking at as we go forward, engaging them in some of these initiatives and hearing their ideas. And we also used we had collaborative sessions with some of them for generating innovative ideas. We got 71 new ideas from 53 employees from across various spheres of our business. Not every one of those ideas necessarily converted into a great business idea, but many of them helped us to understand what was the thoughts that we could, that our employees had, and how could we leverage some of them. For our 3 businesses, I'll quickly summarize. For the leasing business, a lot of our focus was on how to increase our interaction and engagement with our customers, because client retention was the most critical aspect out here. So we proactively engaged with our customers and offered them a few flexible options, because obviously everybody was a little strapped for cash. And so we offered them a little more flexibility in their, allowed them delayed payments schedules as per their own requirements, as per the request that came from them. And also we had a lot of vacant periods. So as in how our workforce built up, we invested that time and money in improving some of the infrastructure, which otherwise during high density occupation periods, we were not able to undertake such work. So we did significant amount of infrastructure investment, several crores of rupees we have spent on infrastructure enhancement and improvement in this period. So we took that as an advantage in this lean period. Our property development business had a different problem. Here we were in the middle of a project which had to be delivered. There were deadlines to be adhered to. The government subsequently came out with some extensions, initially 6 months, and then they made it 9 months because of adverse impact due to COVID. Whatever commitment timeframes, we were allowed to extend it by totally 9 months. But we were not wanting to take advantage of that extended period. We obtained statutory approvals to accommodate these workers and staff, supervisory staff on the site. This helped us to mobilize the team, and there wasn't delay in getting those people from their homes every time. And many of them were labor who were in other parts of the country. So this accommodation offered, and we offered them food and accommodation in these places. So this allowed the working conditions to continue once the government regulatory frameworks allowed that as per their regulations. The health checkup, which was not normally very common, it used to be done once a year, was made almost 2 to 3 times a week. There were regular checkups with our own hospital staff stationed at the site to do the checks. We also engaged with business partners to try and improve, to understand what are some of the challenges that they faced. In fact, I'm happy to inform that we actually delivered the project of Godrej Platinum before time, and most of our customers have rated us, 96% of our customers have rated us excellent for the overall performance and the way we went about delivering this project. Coming to the last business of ours, which is construction materials. Here, the problem was very different. The real estate was considerably affected. And so we saw that, getting our process started, the manufacturing operation started, getting the supply chain back in order was one of the big challenges that we had to face. We had to get permissions from the government for operating these plants once again. And we followed all those norms. We also increased the frequency of scanning the environment, business environment. We realized that the frequency with which we needed to see this earlier was not so much, because now it was a very volatile and very fast changing environment. We needed to do checks and decide on risks and opportunities for which we could leverage as well in this period. So we increased the frequency for our scanning of the business environment. Almost every time we met as a DMC, we would look at these opportunities. And I will talk about one of those as we go forward. We also renegotiated the terms. Many of our customers had stopped supply, but as the space picked up, we started recovering some of their old outstanding dues and recommenced the operations to them. What was happening in the meanwhile, especially in the areas which we operate, was that we saw that the infrastructure sector, which had a lot of projects, all our competitors were bidding very aggressively, and so margins were they were taking it at rock bottom or even lost prices just to keep their business going. In the meanwhile, the government gave some incentives to the real estate sector, and we found that instead of the infrastructure sector, which we were focusing on, we changed our focus to the real estate sector, where we saw a lot more positive traction which we could get from the government. And we then moved to recovering the real estate sector. We anticipated that the recovery in the real estate sector would benefit us, and therefore we decided that we would focus more on the real estate sector than the infrastructure segment. And we also leveraged our digital capability. We had a mobile app in place about 4 or 5 years back, but we decided to leverage the app far more, because it allowed us to have a contactless order placement. It also allowed real-time tracking of our transit mixers to the delivery sites. We added a payment gateway, which allowed people to make the payments through the app itself, which was not there earlier. And we are now able to offer new schemes and benefits which they can take leverage. And we have improved the user interface as well for this app, because this became the mainstay as we went forward. The quality testing also, some of the features in terms of booking of these testing, we started leveraging this. All this resulted in us also winning the awards. We won a Innovation Championship Award for innovation through CII. We won the Customer Obsession Award in this period. And we also won the much coveted Business Excellence Award the last year. So obviously we were very delighted with this, because despite the challenges, we actually did better than all our revenue and profit targets that we had set for ourselves. And also many of our non-financial commitments, we did not falter on them. So despite these challenges, we were able to make these ends, to meet the expectations of the stakeholders. So with that, I'm ending my presentation. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take the questions whenever Dr. Bala, you're ready to have me take those questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anup. It's a wonderful coverage. We'll have questions after all the 3 speakers are done. Fine with you?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Prabhat Verma is Executive Vice President, Operations, South India, Taj Group of Hotels, and the Indian Hotels Company Limited, IHCL, South Asia's largest hospitality company. Prabhat is steering IHCL's organizational journey of reimagining and repositioning some of its most renowned brands in pursuit to continue to be iconic and profitable. A veteran and a trusted Taj hand, Prabhat has grown through the edifice of IHCL. Mr. Prabhat headed the operations of the IHCL hotels in South as Senior Vice President Operations in 2015, and subsequently from 2017 onwards, he was elevated as the Executive Vice President Operations with an additional portfolio of international hotels and the Expressions brand. During the current COVID pandemic year, he has been steering that portfolio in alignment to IHCL's Reset 2020 strategy for mitigating the challenges posed by the unprecedented global crisis and help the company navigate through these difficult times. I would now request Mr. Prabhat Verma to put forward his views.
Do it from here? No, sir. He will. Can I do it from here? You'll do it. Friends, good evening. Wonderful to have me coming in personally to see all of you here. It is an important aspect of how things have moved in our life. As Professor mentioned, a black swan event of this kind, I hope we don't get to see it again in our lifetime. The world has seen many of those in the past too, and they say with every crisis there comes unbelievable opportunities, and it's the question of unbelievable opportunities. Look at it. It's the question of how do we look at it. Am I hearing myself back again? Okay. That's good. What I'll do is quickly get you a snapshot of who we are. What did we do? I've had few of the videos also plugged in, but I'll look at the time and then accordingly. Nice to hear one's voice again. Shreyas, can you start the presentation? So as a company, I don't have to tell you about who we are as a Tata company. It's a 150-year-old company and more, and all of us are very happy to be part of this journey of giving back to the society. In terms of positioning of the company in the global mindset, I don't have to talk about it, so I'll skip few of the stuff that you all talk about it. So I'll skip. Where are we and how many brands that this Tata company represents in our society? Find it nice, huh? My voice is not that bad. I am going to skip through and say that we have 800,000 and more colleagues in the Tata fraternity. Bringing back to you in terms of who we are as Indian Hotel Company Limited, popularly known as the Taj Group of Hotels. Taj is the premium most brand of the Indian Hotel Company, and that's why the connotation of Taj Hotel is what people connect with. We are a 120-year-old company, one of the oldest Tata companies, and from the time that this company started, we still are pure to being a hospitality company. It has many more. If you go back to the history of India and how the journey began, 1903 is the time that this hotel came up. 21 years before Gateway of India. Shall I continue, Professor? Is that okay? During this phase of pandemic, the kind of efforts that our colleagues made, we were rewarded by being recognized as the world's strongest hotel brand. So that speaks volume in terms of the efforts and how we were judged in terms of how we looked at different aspects. a video which will give you a bit of a flavor. Video which will give you a bit of a flavor of it. Friends, when you have an empire of this kind, 100 years of an empire of this kind, you get hit by a black swan event of COVID, you just suddenly stop in between. Remember, you're taught many things in your management schools, but nobody teaches you when there's no income. And it's an industry which is capital intensive and human capital intensive. And when the whole world stopped, we as part of the Tata Group, we opened up the doors. We did not rest. As our colleague Anup was mentioning, there was a lot of anxiety within people. We set up different centers of helping our staff as well as our guests. But what we did right was we didn't stop our hotels. Unlike many other people who chose scare and uneasiness of contact COVID or not, we kept the door open. We allowed the medical fraternity of our country to use our hotel at subsidized rates because we needed the cash flow running as well. The migrant laborers all around, we supplied food to them. We kept our kitchens working, and during this entire phase, we kind of launched nearly 6 brands during the COVID with multi-different kinds of campaigns to keep the spirits alive. I think it was a question of saving life to begin with, and then saving livelihood. And that's the most important aspect of our journey, that we did not just as one Taj hotel, but a house of brands, and we expanded ourselves in different other business that we launched, and it's still a part of a big sustaining alternate revenue stream, we call it, is Human and Ama. And this is where something that I will dwell a little bit more in terms of how these two new line of business helped everything to continue. I'm going to bring into the focus of the innovation, as I was mentioning, how this detrimental effect of COVID was globally seen with losses of occupation in India itself, across the world. If you look at the Indian part of it, everything was down in huge numbers. It was a question of despair. It was a question of loss of jobs of massive nature in our tourism fraternity. Business was zero, as I said. The waves kept coming and but we made sure that our interest was to keep the business running. Strategy and agility is what we coined a word called stragility. I mean, this is something that we kept everybody on our toes to say, read what is happening and start looking at that even an event of this nature brings to your table. So we did something called the reset strategy. I will rather avoid the movie and show you the tenets of what was the attempt made with reset. Reset was to look at alternate revenue growth when the typical kind of businesses stopped. And we did typical kind of businesses come back to those two new brands. Beyond that, businesses of quarantine new brands, whether beyond that businesses or the airline crew, delivering service, people all across different parts of the city. We also went into contactless and digitalization. Acceleration of digitalization really happened during this time. We made sure that we adopted all of that to make our guests much more comfortable without coming in human touch. All requirements regarding spend optimization, prudent financial sense that prevailed, locked ourselves with different owners and partners to help tide away with this problem of no income. This was done by all of our colleagues together. If this only to come back to let you know about the two brands which I want to bring into focus. These were multi, efforts that did in different aspects of businesses, but the big one are the Cumin and Ama, which has become a mainstay now for us. Cumin is the food delivery system. As you all know about how it was important during the pandemic that everybody was getting the food delivered. what we did was we disrupted the doctors. What we did was we created our own food delivery channel where all our restaurants within the hotel, without any capital investment that got in because they were already there. The chefs were already there. We just got them integrated on a platform, and during the teams worked behind the scene without even coming into contact with different cities through without even coming in, as well as Tata Strategic Management Group along with Indian Hotel, and we created this business through Cumin as a delivery. Today, the Cumin has become more like an ecosystem where we also have more like an Cumin quick service restaurant. And this is a quick service restaurant is now across 30 cities in 100 of our hotels. And you can even now download this app. And in 9 different countries, you can send food to your loved ones from Singapore, from Dubai, from London, and New York, in 30 different cities of India, with your global telephone numbers in those 9 countries. So that's how important this business suddenly became. So that's how important this business suddenly became. Incremental cost, and this was a learning experience that we had. This was the second thing that we looked at was the business of during this pandemic, everybody was very critical of who are the kind of people that you go with, which hotel, and how do you ensure that you don't contact with that many more people together. A homestay business was more like a clarion call from our chairman, where we said initially that there should be synergy and simplification and scaling of business within the house of Tatas. Tata Coffee used to have these plantation trail in Coorg. We took over that business as an hotel company and branded it as Ama. We started with 9. To let you know that today we have 8 of them, pan India. And what it has done during pandemic, that people would drive pets would drive to these destinations which were independent villas and homes, with a brand of villas and Taj as a Ama, trusted brand, with their own kith and kin and extended family, with their own kith and kin and extended family, way. While we connected the entire ecosystem, while private owners with their second homes and industrial property, and they all came onto the platform like an Airbnb, but this was all with the promise of the Taj, but this was the commitment of trust as well as experience in different micro destinations with the what we heard about India's with the Ministry of Tourism. They collaborated with them, and now we have this brand. Collaborated with them, important. Now we have this brand because of our company. So there are multiple ways that one can look at opportunities during tough time. We also looked at a new segment with a brand called. We also looked at a new segment. Very much here in Bengaluru. At the very much here in road of Bengaluru, we often were felt that as a Taj, we often were felt kind of age of our guest is 40 plus, but with 7 Rivers, which is another way of working together and a collaborative way. With 7 Rivers, which is another way of brewing company, join hands to create a brewery, a microbrewery at Taj MG Road. Join hands today. It is a brewery as one of the top 10 breweries in India. Does very well, and it has got a new set of customers. Otherwise, does very well, and it has got a new set. We have the new one coming up at Taj Holiday Village, and this too came during the pandemic. And this too came during the pandemic. How do we collaborate, community, and get something which is simple, plain, and playful? Get something which is simple, plain, and playful. The iGest that we launched during the pandemic of the touchless, contactless was also during the pandemic of the touchless, contactless was also what has happened. You also have seen the launch of something very, very exciting for the Tatas, launch of the super app called Tata New. And most of the Tata companies eventually come up onto that platform. And as you may have read and must have realized that digitalization, an emotional connect for a hospitality industry is the way forward. Quite happy that during all of these tough times, that got rewarded with the innovation in Ama, with the innovation in iGest, as well as what we did for the Cuban services, as well as what we did for the Cuban services. the core principles should never be forgotten for any company, and as part of the Tata companies, our values are what the Tata companies are pride ourselves are what the whole commitment of being the right things right and helping the society with a triple bottom line philosophy to operate. Keeps us safe and a good night's sleep, because you know you worked hard for the right reason. Because you know you worked hard for the paucity of time. I'm going to skip few other slides, but I would like to play. I'm going to skip few other slides, but I would like to play the efforts of our company colleagues during the time. Efforts of our company colleagues during the time.
I haven't been home for the past 4 weeks, but my family and colleagues are secure that I have a place to call my own, at least until the pandemic ends. Thank you for caring for frontline soldiers in this war. We really appreciate it, and it helps us to do our duties with even more passion. Thank you.
आम्हाला काय हवं काय नको यात आत्मीयतेने लक्ष घातलं. आम्ही हॉस्पिटलमध्ये कामाला आहोत. आमचा आहार कसा हवा, आम्हाला कोणत्या गोष्टीची गरज आहे, असे जाणीवपूर्वक त्यांनी प्रत्येक गोष्ट आम्हाला दिलेली आहे. आमच्या राहण्यापासून ते खाण्यापर्यंतच्या प्रत्येक गोष्टीमध्ये तालमी आम्हाला साथ दिली.
But in part of the Q&A that you may have some question, but more importantly, as a student of life, these kind of events in our journey obviously puts us in a very, very difficult of life. These kind of events in our journey, one of us have been affected professionally and personally too. But the spirit of human mind is very strong. And what you see in many other companies, including ours, we rose to the challenge, and today, happy to tell you that nearly 90% of the recovery has happened of pre-COVID times, and we're looking forward to glorious moments of connecting the people with experiences all across. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chala Srinivasulu Setti, Managing Director, State Bank of India, is currently in charge of retail banking, digital initiatives, MSME, agriculture, and the financial inclusion activities of the bank. A certified associate of Indian Institute of Bankers, he started his career with State Bank of India in 1988. Across a career spanning over 3 decades, he has worked in corporate credit, retail banking, and stressed asset management, both in India and abroad. As head of retail banking, Mr. Setti looks after a business of deposits of 36 lakh crore rupees and loans of 14 lakh crore rupees. He is a whole-time director on the board of SBI and also a member of various task forces and committees formed by the government. I would now request Mr. C.S. Setti to put forward his thoughts.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Setti. We can hear you strength 5. Please carry.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatta. Thanks for giving this opportunity to the XIME, and very timely topic in terms of the innovation imperative. COVID, post-COVID, I prefer to call post-COVID era. hopefully the COVID is behind us. So after the very interesting presentation on the hotel industry by Indian hotels, banking, is a boring job. So what is that innovation we have done in terms of during the period of COVID? It's a very interesting story. So when COVID transformed from a health issue to the issue of life and livelihoods, one of the most important areas identified by the government is that how do you ensure that the financial services are not disrupted in the country? It becomes extremely important when a pandemic becomes a livelihood issue, that the economic wheels have to continue to progress. And because of that, apart from many of the services, banking also has been declared one of the essential services during the COVID period. So, as a head of retail banking of a bank which touches every part of the country, every citizen of India today, the biggest challenge for me was that how do I keep my channels operational? When I talk about channels, you have branch channels. We have around 23,000 branches. We have ATM channel. We have about more than 60,000 ATMs. And we have customer service points. These are called bank mitras in the rural areas. Around more than 70,000 of bank mitras. And then we have a very large digital channels in terms of mobile banking, internet banking. So how do you keep them running? Was the biggest challenge as a banker I've faced in my life. I think as for the country, once in a century kind of situation, we in the bank also had faced this. So what did we do? One is, of course, when you are running physical channels where the customers and the staff interact in a situation where they're not supposed to be interacting. See, this was the biggest challenge, that how do I protect the customers who are visiting my offices, visiting my ATMs, and visiting my customer service points. We had drawn up an elaborate standard operating procedures. Let me tell you, for all the participants, for every organization, there is a business continuity plan. You must be hearing about BACP. But these BCPs of every organization have been stretched to the limits, tested in a new manner, that how your BCPs have withstood this pandemic is a story in itself. So the biggest challenge for us as a bank, a service provider, is that to run these channels, the backbone is IT, information technology. We have a global IT center in Bombay, where more than 5,000 people work 24/7 to ensure that our global IT platform across almost 36 countries continue to be operational. And they were not allowed to come. Many of them could not come because they were themselves or the family members down with COVID. And as you know, there is no element of work from home in a financial services company. In a bank, how do you make your employees stay at home and do a financial transaction? This was the biggest challenge, and we were not prepared for that. But let me tell you that within 15 days, we put a standard operating procedure. Thousands of our employees who are working in the JATC have been given hardened laptop and were allowed to do financial transactions and financial services, maintenance of computers, maintenance of services from their homes. And this was the biggest achievement in my view in terms of innovation. It probably was very ordinary thing for a software company working from home, even prior to pandemic. For a banking industry to move from a traditional and conventional way of managing their infrastructure to work from home was the biggest innovation in my view that we have done. In terms of channel management, what we have done is that, of course, we have done a host of safety measures at the branches, and we have introduced at the ATMs a cardless transaction. And across our debit cards, we have moved a contactless card platforms. And on our YONO mobile application, we have introduced what is called YONO Cash. You can generate the password right at home, and without having a card, you can draw cash at YONO. I think this was quite a few innovative techniques in terms of making the banking services available to the customers. Another interesting dimension which was created by COVID is even beyond the demonetization, the digital adoption has tremendously and multifold increased. Today, if you see the digital maturity, particularly in the payment space, India probably ranks #1, or along with China, the digital maturity scale of 1 to 5, we are almost there at the level of 5. The payment ecosystem has transformed the whole space, and to leverage on this payment space, we've introduced very innovative products on the YONO platform. And you would be curious to know that 93% of the transactions in State Bank of India happen outside the banking branch channel now. Out of this 93%, around 67% actually happen through the digital channels. It could be internet banking, it could be mobile banking. So this explosion of digital transaction had to push us innovate on our infrastructure, strengthening the infrastructure, and move to the very strong cybersecurity measures, and embark on a great amount of digital financial literacy awareness. Because as more and more people adopted to the digital channels, how do you protect them? How do you create the awareness on phishing, vishing attacks, which they're exposed every day? So while the number of such attacks have increased, but it is also important to know that the volume of transaction also tremendously have gone up. I think today the imperative for the banks is that the biggest imperative, if I can say, that how do you innovate in terms of protecting your customers, the new customers and the old customers who are transforming their journeys from a physical channel-based transaction to a digital-based transaction. I think this is the biggest challenge and biggest innovative space what the banks are going to face, post-COVID scenario. The other thing is that because of COVID and the digital transformation, digital adoption, which has happened in the customer segment, a lot of people in India and across the world have started spending more time on the digital channels. So they started experiencing the services which can be seamlessly provided on digital platforms. And their expectations, or the customer expectations, are now not shaped by another competitor in the banking industry. They're shaped by the people, the e-commerce platform, the food delivery platforms who are there in the market. It is Amazon's, Flipkart's, and Swiggy are all such platforms who are shaping the customer service expectations. So how do banks take care and meet those expectations? It is not the conventional convenience at the branches what you're going to provide. It is an omni-channel experience what the customers are doing. I think this is another innovation imperative the banks have today, that any service or any product which I'm going to make available to the customers, how do I make it seamlessly and uniformly across the channels, whether it is a mobile channel, it is the internet bank channel, ATM channel, or a branch bank channel. I think this is another innovative thing which is working on. And as more people adopted to the digital channels, the ecosystem has also become data rich. And with the data, the expectations of a personalized service also is coming into picture. In fact, today the banks and the financial service providers, with the competition coming from the fintech, are not only talking about personalization, they're talking about hyper-personalization, in the sense that at the individual level, at the family level, what are the needs? Proactively, the bank will be able to assess and design the products and processes which are convenient to the customer. I think this is the transformation which the banking industry is witnessing, and a great amount of analytics and artificial intelligence is being adopted across the banks. For instance, in SBI alone, we have started with a 5-member team of data scientists. Today, probably we have largest number of data scientists in the banking industry. And the analytics team is almost 100-member strong analytics team working in the bank today. So the future of banking and the innovation imperative which is accelerated by COVID. It's not that it has created this innovation requirement, but I think definite acceleration has happened during the COVID time. That how do you design your processes using, the new technology, new dimensions of data analytics, and design the products and processes which the customers and consumer is expecting. The other challenge for banks like State Bank of India, who has today 46 crore customers, almost 70–80% of the adult population, bankable population of the country is banking with SBI, starting from very high net worth individuals, wealth customer, to a zero balance financial inclusion customer. So how do you innovate across this such a large spectrum of customers where you are who are banking with you? For instance, in the financial inclusion space and agriculture finance space and the rural family oriented financing, what is those innovations which we can bring? And as I said, the customer expectations are being reshaped with the ecosystem across the geographies. And the rural consumers are expecting the same level of service as an urban, elite customers, what they have in urban areas. We have started making those services available to the farmers, self-help groups in terms of the mobile banking. We found that the smartphone mobile penetration in rural areas is increasing. We are increasing our payment acceptance infrastructure. We are increasing the mobile-oriented services for the rural areas. The another thing what is coming into picture is that what do you do with the marketing? Again, the traditional conventional marketing of publishing a ad in the newspaper. I am sure that most of the people no more physical newspapers are read. A lot of people of our age also have conveniently moved to a digital platform. And the marketing essentially for the new age, new generation consumers is happening across the social media. So how, as a financial service provider, we reinvent ourselves in terms of our digital marketing strategy is another innovation imperative what banks today have. But the bottom line, of course, the most important thing is, what is the sense of purpose for an organization like State Bank of India, where you not only do innovation for the benefit of your return on equity, return on assets, and shareholder value maximization, but for the societal benefit in terms of a large-scale benefit of the common good. So towards that, a lot of sustainability initiatives have been taken. And through our State Bank of India Foundation, we do quite a few flagship programs which are involved in the society. Even those activities also, we try to bring a lot of innovation. For instance, when we try to look at what are those infrastructure which we can create in the COVID, healthcare, while we were largely engaged in creation of that infrastructure in the hospitals, we also found that there is a need for deeper study, a genetic study of this COVID. So we associated with our CCMB in Hyderabad. We funded a program for genome study of COVID. So, and we are working with large number of NGOs in terms of creating innovation in the farming technology, in the healthcare technology, in the sustainable agriculture, and in the sanitation. So a host of things what we are trying to do through our SBI Foundation. So I think it's both challenging and exciting time for the financial services in India. A great amount of scope for innovation. We are collaborating with our fintech partners, both in terms of banking services, which are customer front-end tools, as well as our own risk management tools. We are large engagement with the fintechs in innovative space. I think for all the people who are on the call, this COVID has, while it has created the large-scale disruption in our health services, and a lot of families had to go through the difficult times, but it was also a wake-up call for all of us that our innovation radar has to be on a high intensity path. And I'm sure India in general and State Bank of India in particular are quite well poised to take this challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shetty. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. We'll now be taking the question answers.
So I would now like to open the floor for questions. So do we have any questions from the audience? And also from people who are joining us online?
Yeah, I would like to start with the first question for Mr. Sethi, because State Bank of India is actually very close to my heart, because I got close to 58 years of association with State Bank of India. That is pretty long. And I've published about 8 papers on State Bank of India and Harvard and other international journals, and worked very closely with the bank. Mr. Sethi, my question is, while everything what you said is how you continued your business as usual, but the most important thing is your credit outflow. For a bank, most important is how well you continue your credit outflow. And when all other industries were very badly impacted, and also even those existing creditors were existing people who have taken your loans, even they have been asked to postpone their repayments. How did you increase your credit portfolio? How did you manage your bottom line and top line? How exactly you manage that part of it?
Well, yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for your association with State Bank of India. I think when you talk about credit, 2-3 aspects I would like to cover what happened during the pandemic. The most vulnerable section of our customers who are impacted by the pandemic are small businesses. Because of the lockdown, many of the small businesses did not have any cash flow at all. So what we have done, first thing, what we announced, at least those people who are having a borrowing arrangement with us, that no questions are asked. If you have X amount of loan with us, we'll give 10% of that as an additional limit to start your operations and continue paying your wages. And this is even before the government of India had announced emergency credit line. We had our own emergency credit line, which is made available to across the bank to every small industry which was operating in our books. And we said that you don't have to show me inventory, stock, nothing. If you have 1 crore limit, you'll get 10 lakh limit as an additional financing arrangement. Subsequent to that, of course, SBI, I myself had worked very closely with the government of India to design this guaranteed emergency credit line, which was, I think, lifeline for many of the MSMEs in terms of providing that required cash flow during the difficult times. And of course, the RBI has been very proactive in terms of providing a restructuring window. 2 restructuring windows were provided during this 2 to 3 waves what we have gone through. And combination of this restructuring window and the additional financing which is provided by the guaranteed loans, I think largely addressed the issues during the pandemic. Many of the MSMEs had issues prior to pandemic also. I think some of them had natural deaths during this period. But I strongly believe that a large number of those MSMEs could be saved because of combination of these proactive measures, both by the government of India and the regulator. And SBI had played a large role because we have large number of small borrowers doing here. And coming to other segments, corporates were more or less well provided because in the last 5 years, a lot of deleverage had happened in the corporate books. So most of the large corporates didn't have any great issues. And among these large corporates also, the contact intensive industries like hotels, airlines got impacted. For them also, the restructuring window was provided and additional emergency line was also given to them. I think that is how they've been taken care of. Then the third segment was individuals. How do you take care of the individuals? For the first time in the history of banking industry in India, and hopefully, I mean, the last time, the individuals are also given the restructuring window. If a home loan borrower, a car loan borrower was allowed to restructure their loan, if they wanted an additional moratorium, an extended repayment that was extended to all the borrowers. But gladly, many of them were not forced to use it. And many of them who have utilized also have come back to normal economic condition now. A lot of people who have taken moratorium are also paying regularly now. The second part, this is on the how do I manage the credit book of existing. But you would also be surprised that these 2 years have been the phenomenal growth in the retail book, both in terms of the home loans and in terms of the retail personal loans. We have witnessed one of the greatest growth rates during this 2-year period. So there were improved demand for the homes, larger homes, and the real estate has picked up, and everybody was looking for having their own home. And a lot of people wanted to have their private mobility. So a lot of people bought the vehicles, cars were increasingly bought. So I think it's a kind of mixed bag. Well, on one hand, we had health crisis, livelihood crisis. I think the bank industry in general has been protected to a large extent with various measures what we are taking. Oh, hopefully I answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's very heartening to know that particularly Anup will be certifying that real estate has really gone up. Is a senior vice president of Godrej Construction Company. And thank you so much for answering in so much in detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Sethi, there is a question for you from our online audience. So you've mentioned that reaching out to people with technology is one of SBI's goals, but SBI is a bank with which most government pensioners use. So it means that they are older customers. How do you think SBI can reach out to this customer segment?
Very good. I think yes, we have the largest number of pensioners. I'm also willing to tell you that we are largest in everything what we do. So in a way, whichever segment you take, we have the largest contribution to that segment. And the pensioners are very, very important clientele to us, both from the deposit point of view, and also very interestingly, most of the pensioners started monetizing their pensions because they are also taking the pension loans. So they are important to me, both from the asset side and the liability side. What we have done for the pensioners, of course, large number of people could not visit. And we have rolled out one of the largest doorstep banking initiatives. We said that any service to the senior citizens, we provide at the doorstep. But as you know, most of the senior citizens would like to come to the branch, would like to spend some time with the branch people. They have an affinity to come. But today, the adoption of mobile banking is very large among the senior citizens. I'm very glad to say that some of the senior citizens are brand ambassadors for my YONO mobile application. So we are providing the digital access, and we also rolled out to pensioners video life certificate. We said that you don't have to come, we will do on a video life certificate and you can give the life certificate. And we started a doorstep picking up the service of the life certificate. And as we speak, we are intending to make 4 of these services free of cost to our senior citizens. We will be rolling out during this quarter that 4 selective services will be free of cost to them. It will be delivered at their doorstep. But as I said, they still would like to come to the branch, and we are creating across the banking channel a separate enclosure for them. When they come, they will be able to have a comfortable sitting place, and they'll be taken care of. We are creating a priority channel for them, senior citizens, if they have a special card, and they will be taken care of.
Thank you, sir, for your clear answer. So we now have a question for Mr. Prabhat. So you are in the homestay business, and you've also mentioned that you forayed into food delivery. Do you think you would be in direct competition with big players like Airbnb, Swiggy, and Zomato?
Yeah, as I mentioned, as a traditional hospitality company, we never ventured into those areas of growth. But during this pandemic, we realized that there's a lot which happens with the word trust. So our customers, our guests on our loyalty program, they contacted us during the COVID period to say, can we get the Taj food delivered? And that's how the journey of Cumin started. And this is very important because everybody wants to have that sense that is it hygienic? Is it clean? Is it handled well? And we have to thank our forefathers, the Tatas, for giving us something as part of the heritage and legacy trust. So that made us as a very, very unique way of bringing in Taj restaurant food to the people. We used to have helpline during COVID to talk to our loyal customers to say, you are at home. Is there something we can do to help you? We engaged with them. Some of them wanted stores item which we were delivering. Some wanted laundry to be delivered. So all of that happened during the COVID period, and a business form came up as part of Cumin. And Cumin today is an ecosystem now. So we also have Cumin stores, as I mentioned. We are also having Cumin trucks now in Bangalore. We drive into places in universities, in certain festivals, and we are building a whole ecosystem around in different places. From an AMA perspective, the competition with Airbnb is of a different kind. We do not have someone who will come in and open the door for yourself and then start your little stay in a city or in a resort. But AMAs are branded residences, curated experiences where we do everything for A to Z. It is an all advance paid, all meal inclusive, all experience inclusive combination. And we work with a hub and spoke kind of approach where existing hotels and in and around, we have developed micro destinations. So as an example, a hotel, say Taj Holiday Village in Goa, is looking after 5 small villas and bungalows in and around that hotel. So supervision, hygiene, quality is supervised by the hotel, while 5 of the butlers, including the chef, looks after you as a complete holiday.
Thank you, sir. That was very clear. And I think there will be other hotels or future hoteliers here who would aspire to be like what Taj is doing right now. So now I have a question for Mr. Anup Matthew. So you've mentioned that Godrej undertook construction during the lockdown. What do you think that was your key success factor which enabled you to do so?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So actually much of what we do in construction cannot be done remotely, as all of us would understand that part. So there was no way but to get physical people on the ground. And this required a lot of working with the government because the regulatory framework was very stringent, especially in the initial stages. And this was not one of the early industries where we got a headway to start working on the project sites. The precautions it was considered less essential in the beginning. Having said that, what we realized that as time passed, the government was becoming a lot more flexible, but they were insisting a lot more on the precautions and the care that we took, the SOPs that we were following. These had to be assured to the local municipal corporations. And only when they were convinced that we were able to provide those on the locations and the inspections happened, and then only would they allow such a change in the way we worked earlier. So I think one thing which we realized was that we had to do many things for the vendor, because otherwise traditionally these vendors would not take the initiative to provide this for the workmen. And so we took the lead in making sure that our project sites were geared up for taking care of these workmen, and all the safety safeguards were in place. And I'm very happy to say that the efforts that we took were good enough to ensure that there were no COVID cases in any of the people who stayed in our premises. So I think that was something which is also a very reassuring thing, because it looked a little bit like paranoia in the beginning, but I think people soon realized that this was for their own benefit, but it also gave us confidence to assure them that they would go back home safely, and they would of course get all the benefits of being on the site as well.
Thank you, sir. It is heartening to know that you had put in all safety measures in place for your workers. As a follow-up question, how did you try to prevent the labor movement and migration in order to complete your projects?
So actually, we couldn't prevent, and it wasn't appropriate to prevent, because a lot of this was in the mind, and people who were scared for themselves, their family members, there was no way we could have stopped them from going back. But many people chose not to go back, and the few who went, after a few months, chose to come back. So we worked with the concerned contractors and the material suppliers to ensure that they had the necessary support, even providing them necessary financial support wherever required, to ensure that they could get back their systems in place. Because a lot of the construction work actually only gets done provided those materials get delivered on the project site. So we had to work very closely with the contractors. Wherever the contract workers were willing to stay back, we made all the arrangements for food and their health and safety. So many people chose to go back, but a good many who went back also came back after a few months, and then we were able to augment the resources and complete the work in time. In fact, well before time, much before the committed time as per our original contract, as per our agreement with the customer, and also well ahead of. We didn't take the advantage of the bonus period or the grace period the government had consented to. We didn't eat into that. In fact, we finished it even before despite the COVID.
Thank you, sir. Would any of our audience here present physically like to ask any questions to our panelists?
Hello. Good evening, sir. First of all, it's a great privilege to have you three all here. The three major homegrown companies, Godrej, Indian Hotels, and SBI. So, but my question is for Mr. Prabhat Verma. Sir, the innovation which you have mentioned, all the three innovations, after three, I want to talk about the AMA stays. You said that it was invented during the pandemic time. So during the pandemic time, when the transportation was shut, who were your target audience?
You see, there was a lot of emotions attached, and whenever the windows opened for people to travel, thankfully today's the infrastructure and the roads in India have become very, very good, especially if you step out of the cities. As you were mentioned, you heard from a colleague from SBI that the people wanted to have their own mobility, their own cars. So many of them put together their families and friends to go together in one place. Our AMAs are generally 4 to 6 bedroom bungalows with a swimming pool, with a kitchen and the chef and colleagues to look after you. And all of them obviously were certified, vaccinated, and we took care of that. So that became a place for trust. So anytime something happened, even a small celebration, homecoming of their children from abroad for when they were stuck in COVID during their holiday making, or some small family occasion for 10 to 14 people, they would celebrate in AMAs. And we had AMAs pan-India. So from Goa to Munnar to Coorg to Darjeeling to other places, it kept growing.
We'll have one last question. Anyone?
So the question and answer session comes to a close. I would now call upon Professor N.M.K. Bhatta, Dean Research, to give Mr. Prabhat Verma a memento as a token of our love and affection.
Yeah, before I do that, I would like to personally thank all the three speakers, Mr. Sethi and Mr. Anup and Mr. Prabhat Verma. With all three of them, I've got connected for the last 10, 15 years in somehow or other. And thank you so much. I know Mr. Sethi was jumping from ship to make this happen. I have known how much difficult it is for him to make this happen. Special thanks. And Anup, I just spoke to him about 2 days back. Anup, thanks for accommodating us. while formal vote of thanks may continue, but for my personal side to thanking all of you for making it happen. And thank you for giving such a wonderful insights into what you did during COVID during these 2 years, so that our students will be heavily benefited and what exactly innovation means. Thank you from my side.
I now call upon Ms. Philo Maria to deliver the vote of thanks.
It is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks today. This event would not have been possible without the founder and chairman of Zyme Bangalore, Professor J. Philip, who has always strived to provide us with multiple opportunities to interact with industry stalwarts and business leaders. We thank Chairman Zyme Kochi, Ambassador C.P. Ravindranathan, for always encouraging us and keeping the students of this college abreast with current affairs. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to President of Zyme Society, Mr. Anil J. Philip, for constantly motivating us and empowering students to push their boundaries and challenge the status quo. I also thank Director of Zyme Bangalore, Dr. Nellappan, for his calm and composed aura and for facilitating this event. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dean Research, Zyme Bangalore, Professor NMK Bhatta, for moderating this session. I would like to thank Dean Academics, Zyme Bangalore, Professor Madhukumar, for being ever so supportive and proactive. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our esteemed panel of speakers, Mr. Anup Matthew, Mr. Prabhat Verma, and Mr. C.S. Sethi. We were honored to be in your presence and hear you share your perspectives on this issue. I would like to express my appreciation to the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce for their continued support and association with Zyme, and especially throughout this 3-part webinar on COVID, the innovation imperative. To all the guests and students present on the online platform Zoom and present here with us, you have been great. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.